Fellow at Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, and currently Associate Professor at Banaras Hindu University. He is a well-known scholar in the field of indentured labor. Today he is going to speak on Girmitias and crime on the plantations of Fiji 1879-1920. Most of the history of this subject has been written from the point of view of official documents, archives, records, etc. etc. Now, Dr. Ashutosh Kumar endeavors to present the other side of the story from the point of view of the Girmitias, from the point of view of the indentured labor themselves, how they perceived crime and how their perceptions differed from the perceptions we see in the official records. Needless to say that this subalternist school perspective is very, very important for enrichment of our understanding of history. So I welcome Dr. Ashutosh Kumar, and I welcome all members of the audience this afternoon. Without further delay, now I would like to invite Ashutosh to go ahead with his presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I want to begin by thanking former director NMML, respected Sri Shakti Sinha ji. During his tenure, I became fellow at this institution for 2 years. I would also like to thank Sri Raghavendra Singh, present director NMML, Dr. Ravi Mishra, deputy director NMML, Dr. Narendra Shukla, head research and publication division, Mr. Iqbal Ahmed, Mr. Rajneesh Ranjan, and all staff of Nehru Memorial Museum and Library who facilitated my research during the fellowship. This talk is my final presentation of 2 years fellowship at Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, on which I finished my second book entitled Kulinama, Lost Voices of Indentured Indians. This research primarily focuses on Fiji, which was one of the British colonies where around 60,000 Indian laborers were shipped out under the indenture system between 1879 to 1917. This talk looks at the crimes of Indian indenture workers on the colonial sugar plantations of Fiji. While official documentation of crime is a standard source of information for historians and scholars to discover the history of coolie life, this paper uses the letters and petitions of indentured Indians as alternative source through which one can understand the life of workers under the plantation regime. The petition and letters written languages written in Indian languages give us a vivid picture of crimes such as murder, suicide, physical molestation on the plantations of Fiji. Historians have explored the crime on plantations in terms of harsh plantation regime, where there was no life than a tool of machine used in production of sugar. In doing so, they have rarely tapped the sources generated by those involved in the event. So in this talk, I have tapped the letters and petitions written in Indian languages and dialects such as Hindi, Bhojpuri, Urdu, etc., and have tried to look at the ways in which these letters were being addressed. The peculiar style in which these letters are being written and understanding of the empire and plantation regime by the West subject of the British Empire. Overall, this is a small intervention to write an alternative history of Indian laborers in colonial Pacific. Now, looking to the felonious life on the sugar plantation of Fiji, there are various kinds of felonious activities on the plantations. Murders and physical assaults were the frequent crimes on the plantations. A letter written by a Muslim butcher, Najir, an indentured laborer in Fiji, reveals a murder story in which Najir was accused of in Fiji. The court had sentenced to death for Najir, but later governor of Fiji commuted it in life imprisonment. After 18 years in prison, he wrote to governor of Fiji for release on his good conduct in Galle. In his letter, Najir claimed that he did not participate in murder and someone Karim did the incident. He saw the killing of the person, but he did not reveal it to the police. And in court, as Karim had warned for a serious consequences. In this fear, he kept quiet, but police caught him and put the charge of murder on him. Court punished him with death sentence, but governor commuted it to life imprisonment. Nazir contended that the coal superintendent has assured his release if he shows a good conduct during his imprisonment. Nazir requested governor to check the prisoner's conduct. The conduct sheet of Nazir shows that he was admitted in the life prisoner on 15th January 1885 on a charge of murder. His conduct book shows many small offenses, most of whom were dismissed by the superintendent after giving a warning. In some cases, he received punishment. The governor of Fiji, after having a careful look at his letter and conduct sheet, issued an order to colonial secretary to convey the superintendent of prison that, quote unquote, it is impossible to intervene before the 20 years are up, quote close. Now, if you look the actual letter of the Nazir, he writes, and look to the style of his letter. Letter is to on the top of the letter it has been written Kisko, and then it has written Lat Sahab ko, and then he writes गरीब परवर सलामत गुजारिश है कि नजीरत का कसाई है और मुस्मीन है और कुली में नाम लिखा कर आया है और फिजी के मांगों कोठी में गिरमिट है. So, I mean, if you look the style that how he's addressing, giving his caste, giving his place where from he came and what he is doing. And then at the end of the letter, you will find, and he describing the whole story, what happened. And then at the end, he writes that, हुजूर आप हमारे माई बाप हैं और आप जैसा सोचेंगे वैसा अच्छा होगा. So that's the letter written by Nazir for his release. If we read Nazir's letter carefully and look from the perspective of Nazir, the colonial courts in plantations colonies were not doing minute and fair investigations. Nazir in his letter to the governor of Fiji wrote that he was not involved in murder, rather he saw the murder done by Karim. He confessed in his letter that he did not mention it to police and that was his fault. He also said that he did not inform police because Karim had warned him of consequences. But in court discussion, Nazir was found guilty of murder. On plantations, many crimes of molestation and physical assault occurred due to the colonial arrogance of plantation officials, such as sardars and managers. The plantation officials were most often treating laborers as their servant of feudal order, with whom they can deal with any means, where molestation and bodily harassments were general norms. Indian laborers did not entertain such behaviors to their colonial official, and hence, in return, they too assaulted them. The letter of Bhavani Singh reveals this aspect of crime on the plantations. Bhavani Singh was sentenced by the Supreme Court of Fiji on 21st September 1901 for 7 years of prison upon a charge of wounding with intent to bodily harm to an English official. Bhavani Singh, in his petition addressed to the governor of Fiji, wrote that the case against him was not investigated properly. Hence, he requested to reinvestigate the case. Bhavani Singh confessed that the officers beaten him first, and then he in return beaten the officer. Hence, it was not his fault. Rather, it was official's fault who beaten Bhavani Singh without any reason. Bhavani Singh claimed that the court favored the English official without recording my statement and given me jail, and hence the injustice has occurred in Fiji country, of which you are the main boss. He's writing to governor. The letters written by the Bhavani Singh was as follow, and he writes. Again, he's addressing that Kisko to His Excellency Lad Sahab, and then खत लिखा भवानी सिंह जेहली सुबह जेल से, गरीब परवर गुजारिश है कि मैं आपका बहुत ही सलाम करता हूं, आपकी मेहरबानी चाहता हूं कि सरकार हमारा ऊपर है और मालिक है, और इस मुल्क के बॉस है, बॉस को बॉस, he has written in boss है, और and then again he is also describing that how he did this incident, and at the end again he is also writing that कि सरकार माई बाप है और सरकार हमें इस जेल से मुक्त कर दिया जाए. That is written by Bhavani Singh, but Bhavani Singh narrated this letter to a police who was there and who wrote on behalf of the Bhavani Singh, because many of the indentured laborers were of course not literate, so there were translators who were helping them to write their letters to governor. Bhavani Singh later shows that the colonial court on plantations were biased towards the English officials. Very rarely an English official get conviction of a crime. Apart from that, it also shows that the plantation officials were treating indentured laborers as their home servants, to whom they had a divine right to beat and injure them. Violence by planters, overseers, and sardars invariably took the form of assault either by the use of whip, chabuk, or a stick, or bodily in form of slap, punches, or kicks on the laborers. The overseers and sardars were primarily concerned to supervise the work on the plantations. As Vijay Naidu explains, that given the fact that the emigrants found the task frequently excessive, compulsion in the form of physical violence took place. When it came to beating for the failure of the complete task or to do the work to the satisfaction of those authority, both men and women were treated alike. The system of indenture and the way it operated in the plantations of Fiji resulted in an absolute power in few hands over the majority laborers. In most of the cases, sardars were Indians who were lifted from general class of quote-unquote coolies by the managers, and hence these people did not hesitate to deal with the violence against their countrymen in the interest of their superiors. According to Hugh Tinker, the sardars had the power to deduct wages and have an immigrant prosecuted, fined, or imprisoned, beaten up, or sometimes even deprived of his women. Indentured laborers in their interviews reveals the stories of violence on them. Some ex-indentured laborers spoke as follow. These are some interviews of the laborers. Interviews was done around 1979 on the 100 years of the Fijian migration. Hausildhar, according to him, we were hit for small mistakes. If you woke up late, that is later than 3 a.m., you got whipped. No matter what happened, whatever there was rain or thunder, you had to work. We were here to work, and work we had to do. Otherwise, we were abused and beaten up. That's what he said in the interview. Pahari, another Girmitia, he also said, like, I have been whipped. I do not want my child to be whipped. If you worked well and followed orders, there was no trouble. But if you did not, then you were in trouble. So these are the interviews, and there are so many interviews which I have tapped, but I will just give these two. In the context of plantation, the failure to do task or fulfill a given order was tantamount to attacking those in authority, as their very existence depended on the amount of work they could extract out of the laborers. The reaction, therefore, was violent. Indentured laborers who were in their eyes indolent or insolent, and so impeded the smooth running of the plantation, and who might set a bad example to others, were beaten up mercilessly in their presence. Although the laborers received bad or violent treatment, However, one cannot generalize that all laborers received the same treatment. Many laborers were hard workers and hence they did not give any extra push. If they pushed the workers too far, they would react. This is what happened in the case of Bhavani Singh. In fact, many Sardars had already worked as a general coolie laborer and they had lifted to the position of Sardars due to their hard work and sincerity. Apart from that, Sardars were also aware of their own position in society. They were to see that the laborers would diligently or else they would be replaced. Apart from the violence and pressure exerted upon the indentured laborers by Sardars, the judicial system was also oppressing through the penalties. The penalties were administered by the stipendiary magistrates, and the stipendiary magistrates were frequently fined and or imprisoned indentured laborers for various offenses such as refusal to complete work, unlawful absence, threatening behavior, breaches of discipline, damaging or losing property of employers, etc. The following data shows I have collected the data through annual reports of all conviction rate of Indian immigrants in Fiji, and data shows that in year 1887 the conviction rate was 81.78%. If I mean out of 100, 81.8778% people were convicted and others were not convicted. And 1888, 76.75, 1889, and so on. So overall, you will find that the conviction rate was more than 80%. As this table shows, the large number of immigrants got convicted who were taken to the court each year by employer. Where large number of Indian immigrants on plantations of Fiji got convicted, when employers brought them to the court, there were few employers convicted when laborers taken them to the court. There were many instances when indentured laborers complained against the plantation managers, sardars, and overseers for overtasking, negligence, and non-payment of wages, maltreatment, etc. In 1885, there were 19 complaints of assaults and battery. In 1909, there were 71, of which only 19 resulted in conviction. Apart from this, there were many incidents of violence committed upon the immigrants which never came up to the law. Those who went to the court, their cases were dismissed for lack of evidence. In various cases, the Indian suffers lack of awareness of procedure followed in the court and hence failed to present their case properly. The petition of Pachai is one of the unique case of non-payment of wages by the managers on the so-called refusal to complete work. A stipendiary magistrate found Pichai guilty on negligence of work allotted to him. Pachai wrote a long letter to Agent General of Immigrants regarding the discontent and his wrong imprisonment. In his letter, Pachai described the incident in detail. Here is the original letter of Pachai wrote to the Agent General of Immigrants, and he writes, Garib again is writing in the, again it's a style, their style to write, North Indian style, that Garib Parvar Salamat, मैं पचाई, मैं फिजी के जहाज Ganges Pahila, the first Ganges, the ship name was, so they have से आया हूँ और फिजी में मेरा गिरमिट है और मैं हमसे सरदार से रार हो गई, and he is again describing in this way, and at the end again he is also mentioning. So if you look to the format of writing the letter, they start with dua salam and then giving all details of from where I am and what I have done, and then at the end again sarkar aap hamar mai baap hai. So this is a format where you will all the time find that, and apart from that, if you look carefully to the letters, they have always use the Bhojpuri terminology if they are from the UP Bihar regions. So all Bhojpuri way of writing letters and permit you will find in the petitions and letters written to the higher authorities, especially to governor of Fiji or immigrant agents or protector of immigrants. Indentured laborers were also facing problem of finding a witness in support of their complaints. Due to the fear of Sardar or overseer, other indentured laborers who had witnessed of beating or cruelty on other fellow laborers rarely turn up to the court in support of victims. The problem was noted in the annual report of 1900. This was a big problem actually on the plantation, because other laborers were fearful of the definitely plantation owners or the authorities. And this was even noted down in the annual report. And see what the report says, I quote: complaints made to police and inspector where visible mark of injury were shown could not be prosecuted, or if prosecuted were dismissed for want of evidence to support complaint. Witness named being reluctant to dispose. Quote close. It is important also to note here that the magistrate who heard these cases were employers of colonial government who had a good terms with Colonial Sugar Refinery Company, who was responsible to recruit indentured laborers in Fiji. CSR company, she was an Australian company. Hence, they were sympathetic to employers. Gillian, as you must be knowing, Gillian, a historian of indentured labor, notes that, I quote Gillian: the majority of overseers and stipendiary magistrate thought in terms of stereotypes, stressing the necessity to maintain strict discipline and not to show weaknesses before the Indians. Quote close. Vijay Naidu, in his research on court cases on the plantations of Fiji, found that in those cases which were initiated by inspectors of police on behalf of the immigrants met with greater success than the litigation initiated by laborers themselves. It was due to the knowledge of handling the cases and procedures to be followed in the court of law. Indian laborers were very much suspicious of all Europeans, and especially those who were associated with the indenture system. This suspicion made of violent relations between laborers and authority. One of the major causes of violence by indentured laborers against those in authority was their belief that there was no space for them to voice their grievances. Although there were laws through which one can get justice, however, there were many obstructions. Looking to the cases brought up in the Supreme Court against Indians and the numbers of convictions, the obstruction clearly reveals. In 1887, for example, there were 10 criminal charges brought against 16 Indians in Supreme Court, resulting in 13 convictions. In 1886, 8,835 Indians taken to court for offenses. 6,685 were convicted. In 1906, out of 1,577 immigrants charges, 1,084 were convicted. In 1917, there were 79 cases brought to the Supreme Court against 100 Indians, of whom 72 were convicted. So in 1897, a sergeant of police of Lavasa reported the difficulties faced by Indians when laying charges against the authority to the superintendent in Suva. And I quote, this is what this Sergeant Mason begs to inform the superintendent that this is what he is reporting. It is a usual thing for Indians to come to the police station between the hour of 9 and 12 at night to complain of the treatment they get on some of the plantations. And when asked why they are so late, say that they have to wait until dark as Sardars watch them and will not let them go. So we can see the problem, what kind of problem they were facing there. This is when they have been beaten during the day, and if the overseers hear that they have been they have been to police station, they get their money cut, also get heavy tasks to perform, and most likely another thrashing. Directly, the overseers hear that the Sardars had beaten any of the people. He at once cautioned the one who got the beating and all who saw it that if they go to complain to the magistrate or sergeant, that he will beat them and give them heavy work to do. The consequence is that any of the police are ill used, they cannot get any of those who saw it to go as witness for them because of these threats. So these are the problems which they are facing. The Agent General of Immigration, while referring to the figure of charges brought against employers by laborers, wrote in his report of 1901, and I quote the report, the cases do not represent all instances of unlawful violence. Some are compromised, while in others victims are loath themselves, or their witness are unwilling to give evidence. Quote close. Due to the bias, discrimination, and favoritism by the courts and judges, many indentured laborers revenged through violence with the authority. For example, in 1900, two European overseers convicted for severe assault on emigrants with a fine of £5 and £3 respectively, and transferred to other district. It was exceptional when an overseer or sardar was convicted and given severe penalties. Emigrant laborers were in peril from both ways, whether they go to court or not. In 1906 annual report of immigration described, the labor lay with the employers, I quote, and emigrants did not escape retaliation for going to court against their masters. There were punishments such as sanitary work or drain digging, beating, punitive prosecutions, and refusal of privileges such as permissions to leave the plantation on Sundays. And there were examples of overseers publicly refunding fines to sardars convicted of assault, even of regular system of this. It is not surprising that immigrants often resorted to the cane stick, knife, or hoes instead of to the law. Quote close. However, as Burton has mentioned that at many occasions, laborers taken the law into their hand. He wrote, the coolie takes the, I quote Burton, the coolie takes the law into his own hands and tried to edge of his cane knife upon the skull of the English overseers. Quote close. That's what Burton was a padri there, and he wrote this.
Ashutosh, please start concluding.
So towards conclusion. Yeah. Can I conclude in 5 minutes? I will take.
You have 5 minutes, please.
All right. Thank you, sir. So I will go quickly. Apart from the letters of Mahadev, Kulish, and Ganesh reveal the root of discontent between overseers. So there were always, discontent between overseers and sardars and indentured laborers. And if you look to the many other letters, you will find that some discontent emerged due to the women. So, a letter written in Rewa there, regarding a murder of a woman reads like that. So some Indian indentured laborers wrote the letter to colonial secretary to make a law which can prevent switching over the women or prevent the divorces. There were few women and there were more men, so such problems were happening on the plantation, and that was the another problem, another thing which intended to the problem of murders and suicides on the plantations. If you look to I'll go directly to a letter written by these Indians, the violence done by. So there was one letter I will read by the Man Kumari. Man Kumari wrote a letter to colonial secretary of Fiji and which was for which we took the help of a policeman, and she writes in the letter that, I'll read the Hindi version and then, चिट्ठी लिखा मन कुंवारी औरत पास छोटा लाट साहब के हमारी सलाम पहुंचे। साहब हम आपके पास लिखता है कि साहब हमारा कसूर नहीं है, रामरेखा को ने जैसा हमको सिखाया हम वैसा बोला, रामरेखा पुलिस जैसा बोला हमने कहा, और कोर्ट ने 2 आदमी के बदले 2 आदमी को फांसी दिया और हमको 20 बरस का जेहल दिया। जेहल दिया। सरकार हमारा मतारी बाप है और सरकार हमको भी फांसी दे दे या हमको छोड़ दे, हमसे सरकार छोड़ दे। Yes. So this Man Kuwari wrote a letter to colonial secretary saying that the crime was not done by me, and whatever I give the statement in the court was, I gave because of the Mahabir police, because he said that if you will say this, then you will be released, you will go jail, but it happened the vice versa. So what we found that there were many, due to the such, cheating, many women or many others went to jail. But these letters, apart from that, these letters reveal a cruel life on the plantation. That is important. And if you look to the letters and their words and their problems, then one can understand that how many male, female indentured laborers got convictions and involved in the murder, suicide. So for instance, if you look to a data between 1885 to 1919, there were 184 immigrants and their children were murdered, and 276 people were taken to the court for murder, in which 172 were convicted. So one can see that the large number of murders and suicide happened on the plantations. As I have argued elsewhere, in the most of the cases of murder of wife or women, the Indian notion of patriarchy was involved. Plantation regime had given a relative freedom to women to choose their partners. Taking the advantage of a scarcity and economic strength, women frequently changed their partners, which was almost absent in their culture at home back in India. Such changing attitude was also responsible for suicides among the male indentured. However, the colonial authorities blamed it for sexual jealousy for the suicide. The annual report of Immigration 1902 stated as follows. I quote this report and then I'll conclude. In view of general character of the average Indian immigrant, his vice, his arrogance, his environment and temptation in Fiji, the scarcity of Indian women is a circumstance involving serious consequences and is, on that account, I think, a matter of careful consideration. The discrepancy will be adjusted in time by birth in Fiji according to the prevailing law. But the process is slow, and in the year that must elapse before anything like natural proportion is attained among adults generally, the evil arising from disproportion of sexes must be charged to a system which treats an imperative law of nature as subordinate to the exigencies of sugar industry. That's what the annual report said. I quote close. Now to the conclusion. The petition and the letters are another set of sources which reveals the everyday plantation life easy. Most of letters written or narrated by the indentured laborers in Indian languages and dialects reveals the crime and punishment on the plantations. These letters shows that murder, sexual harassment, suicides, adulteries, physical harassments were very much prevalent under the plantation regime in Fiji. In the whole story, colonial officials were accessing power negatively, where plantation official and judiciary got mingled, and hence rule of law became mockery. Women were murdered due to the accessing her patriarchal free environment, which was not acceptable for Indian men. Men were having suicides due to the lack of coping power of administration as well as fractured social setup. physical harassments by authorities and to the authorities where they are due to the violation of norms by authorities to laborers, as well as in terms of retaliation by laborers to the authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashutosh, for a very, very comprehensive, detailed, and insightful lecture on the subject. Uh, you have raised so many issues regarding this subject. I would like to get your, comments on some of them. It's very interesting. You rightly mentioned that the crime rates were very, very high because of a variety of reasons. Mainly, of course, because of the very nature of the society, that plantation society in which these indentured laborers were working. But I just wanted to know, is there any statistical study, comparative statistical study done on the crime rates prevalent in Fiji or other indentured colonies and India? I would just like to get your answer on that. Now, the other question that arises is, of course, you talk about the brutality and cruelty of many of these crimes, but is there any peculiarity to them? Because many of the crimes that you mentioned, of course, they were prevalent in India also at that time, and maybe even later. So, because you have worked on this particular subject, I would like to know if you find anything that is peculiar there. Second is, you see, you talk about how the petitions were written in a certain style. They wrote Lord Saab, Salam, etc., etc., and then in the end they wrote, that government is my Baap. So, in what way was this style of petitioning different from the style as it existed in India? Because so far as I'm aware, something similar was prevalent in many parts of India when people wrote petitions to higher authorities. They obviously didn't know who the exact authority was, so they wrote it in a general way, thinking that there is a queen, there is a Lord Sahib, etc., etc. So, if there is anything really different or peculiar about Fiji, I would like to know that. The third point that arises is, we know that the authorities were very, very sort of, how should I put it? They were very, very high-handed in their handling of, the crimes committed by Indians. Now, were they more so in the case of Fiji? Would you say that? And then another very important point is, you rightly talk about how the overseers, the Sardars, could be very, very oppressive. And these were the people who were mostly Indians, and they had risen from the ranks. But once they became Sardars, they became very, very oppressive. So, of course, in a way, it also suggests how the transition from the subaltern to not so subaltern, took place there. Once somebody became a Sardar, he adopted the ways of the dominant group and he started oppressing. Now, there is a very interesting thing here which I would like to mention, that the oppression of these people, Sardars, etc., was very much prevalent in India also. There is a story by Premchand. I unfortunately cannot remember the title of the story now, in which there is a group of cleaners who are cleaners and sweepers who are overseen by a daroga, and there is this poor lady who has a small child, and the child is sick, so she cannot leave the child at home, and the child doesn't allow her to work, and she's worried that her salary will be deducted if the daroga comes and sees. And just as she is thinking this, daroga comes, and she feels really frightened. Of course, there is a happy ending to the story, that daroga somehow feels compassionate, and he gives her the whole salary. But this thing, that the Sardars, overseers can be very, very hard-hearted, etc., it was there in India as well. Lastly, one thing that that strikes me is when you say that women in India, you know, at that time in the late 19th or early 20th century were not used to changing men. I think that that's not entirely correct. You see, you are basically talking about a certain kind of women when you say that patriarchy was prevalent. It was prevalent basically among upper class, middle class, upper caste women. As far as the masses were concerned, there was far more freedom for women to choose their partner or abandon one person and start living with another. So, this is one thing that I would like to say. Would you like to respond to my comments?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. These are really important comments and questions, and this is definitely part of my research. The question and comments which you have put. So, see, there is no comparative secondary literature on India and Fiji. But if you look to the legislative debate of 1916 or 1912 or 1910, when Indian nationalists were, discussing against the system in India in legislative assembly, they were giving this rate. So, for instance, in 1916 legislative debate on end of indenture, Madan Mohan Malviya gave a detailed analysis of why suicide rates are high in Fiji. And this was also outside the legislative assembly. Many other Indian nationalist leaders raised this issue, for instance, C.F. Andrews and Gandhiji. So, we have no secondary literature in academia, but we have primary source on the suicides and murders rates in India and Fiji. That's one. Now, looking to the petition and peculiarity of writing the letters, of course, even if the one thing which I would like to mention here and which is peculiar about the letters, that these letters are written in a format, these things are written in a format of letter, but to give it a legal value, they called it petition. So so you will find that although they on the official handling, it has been categorized as a petitions, but these are in form of letter, because in petition you don't write like my Bab Salamat as. But even if you look to the some princely estates courts and petitions, for instance Rajasthan courts and petitions during colonial or even pre-colonial period, there was a system, there not system, there was a structure of writing thing here. I mean, I since I haven't seen exactly
If I may just add, in the princely states in many parts of India, especially in Rajasthan, there was a very long, well-developed and elaborate tradition,
yes,
and in
yes,
fact, there was an entire system to respond to such petitions.
yes,
And
yes.
quite often we are surprised at the pace at which things happened then,
That's
compared
true.
to our own times.
So I think, I mean, these things were also happening on the plantations, because once somebody was writing to governor, he or she was receiving the answer as well. And if there is a need of some changes or to go to the court, they were being instructed to go and look for the matter. So, so definitely there was a letter and then response from the government. Both things were there. Now, looking to the exploitation in India and exploitation by Sardars on the plantations of his, there is what I have found a difference, that in India, if you look to the Premchand and many which you mentioned, that these exploitation was, broad, oftenly, or you can say always done by a high caste. Caste is always there. Sardar would be the high caste, or whoever would be the higher authority, that would be the. So
In the case of this story, the Sardar is a Muslim.
okay, so maybe the Sayyad again, in the Muslim there is caste. So, but on the plantation, You will there was no such tradition that the Sardar would be always a high caste. So anyone can be a Sardar, but the problem of the Sardar was that he was mingling with the colonial officials rather than with the Indian laborers. That was the sad story, or the story of the problem of the story on the plantations. Now looking to the use to changing men in India, yeah, see, there is a little problem actually. I mean, we can't say in a definite manner that the lower caste or the lower caste people were much mobile in changing husbands. I mean, there are new researches going. I have not done any research. I can accept this, but I think there is references which, I mean, for instance, Udhari, Gargaili, Dholkarahi. These were the women who were living outside the wedlock. That I know, and these culture were there, but the portion was very low. I mean, you can say that maybe 1% or 0.5%, that I can say. So we can't generalize it. Though the patriarchal mobility was really, really less in lower society than the higher caste. That is true. That I accept. So yeah, these, I think I have done your all queries, or I left some.
No, that's okay. All right. Is there any question or comment from the audience? We have just a couple of minutes. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead, Janki.
Thank you, Ashutosh, for your paper. I enjoyed it. Well, I think I'd like to start actually by reiterating the point that Dr. Mishra made, because I too was struck by that, and I feel that we should always beware from imposing our own sort of middle class or upper caste morality onto everyone, and assume really also that ideas of caste endogamy meant that actually people followed monogamy. One of the readings that I'd like to suggest is Jonathan Parry has an excellent article in Modern Asian Studies on, it's called Unkalu's Errant Wife. And it actually shows differences in morality. In Chhattisgarh, he worked in the Bhilai steel plant among sort of working class people and those who were of a different class. So that would be a useful reference, I think. The other, I was really, I was very interested also in this manner in which the letters kind of all end with claiming some kind of kinship relationship, that you're my and Bab.
Yeah.
And in contemporary India, Geert de Neve has done interesting work, and there is work on the use of kinship terms among laborers. And so this, I mean, often, so Geert de Neve makes the argument that actually recruiters will use kinship terms with workers, but they use it in a way to almost silence them on the shop floor and to extract labor. And here it's the other way around. But it will be interesting to look at whether this relationship between the Sardars and the coolies, was there this use of kinship terms? If there are any sources that will tell you, and I think Geert de Neve's work will also be interesting for you to push that argument about what it means to use these kinship terms and what is the way in which they are pleading, saying, claiming a kind of filial respect, filial dependence, and so on the colonial officials. I was just wondering, one last query, which was on when you talk about these interviews that were done on the 100th year of Fijian immigration, I was wondering who did those interviews. You don't really tell us, and also whether the archives have any letters along with these letters, whether you found any letters that were written to family members, meaning these are letters that would have been in the judicial files, But were there any other writing that were done to people, say at home or in other in another part of the world? Thank you. I
Thank
enjoyed your
you.
paper.
Thank you for your questions and suggestions of reading this Jonathan Perry book. I will go through it, and I hope this would be very helpful for me actually while I was working on petition and all. Looking to the my bap relationship, what I feel, I mean, definitely it's a kinship relationship, but the origin of this my bap relationship is something like a feudal relationship. So this relationship went to Fiji from India, because if you look to the this bonded labor of system, or maybe look to the village setup and how people were treating treating to other caste, high caste treating to the lower caste, then you will realize this my bap relationship. They always indicate their feudal lords that you are my bap, and my bap is you are everything. So so I have not found anything such relationship between sardars. uh, you said sardars and laborers, right? No, there was no such my bap relationship between sardar and laborers, but they always indicating governor, I mean colonial officials, the higher officials and laborers relationship in terms of my bap. The interviews which you asked was done by Ahmad Ali, who was a famous historian of Fiji, and I have taken these interviews from him actually. So he did, I think, at the century actually, I mean around 60s 70s laborers were alive, indentured laborers, and he did the interview with his students. So I am using his interviews because I can't find any indentured laborers. I have interviewed to the son of the indentured laborers or the daughters of the indentured laborers, but not to the indentured, because there is no any indentured laborer alive nowadays. Apart from in the letter, it's difficult to even obtain an official letter. It's really difficult. I know how I have obtained. So it's more difficult to find a letter written by family members. We have some letters written by the family members in the post indenture period, but not in the indenture period. So for instance, I have a letter written by a family of Mauritius to Mauritius to India, and India to Mauritius in post indenture period. But in such letters, there are some letters which were written to the family members. For instance, one letter which I found, that a young boy wrote to his family in Kanpur, and on the letter, actually by mistake, the transcriber wrote Campbellpur. So letter did not go to the actual place, and in that way it reached to the dead letter box. And there I discovered this letter, old letter, where he is writing that last month I sent you 5 rupees, and in the next month I'll send you the another 5 rupees. I am very fine, I have not married here. So these things are there actually, that I can say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashutosh. I think we have reached the end of today's session. It has been a wonderful session. We had a good lecture and interesting discussion. After the lecture, I thank Dr. Ashutosh Kumar, and I thank all members of the audience for their enthusiastic participation. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.